The tumultuous scenario of the Red Sea is colored by the persistence of clashes between the Houthis and the military coalition led by the United States and the United Kingdom. As the conflict spills over into Yemen, the region is embroiled in tensions exacerbated by Iranian-backed terrorist attacks targeting civilian shipping and oil tankers. In response to more than 24 Houthi drone and missile attacks on commercial vessels in the Red Sea since November, the United States and the United Kingdom have unleashed an unprecedentedly large operation. The combined air and naval strike operations, led by the United States, seek to counter the situation in a long-term military campaign called Operation Poseidon Archer, specifically targeting the Houthis in Yemen. Operation Poseidon Archer's main objective is to significantly weaken the offensive capacity of the Houthis, marking a milestone in the intensification of the military response. The current ongoing attacks by the United States and the United Kingdom represent an unprecedented escalation compared to the early days of the campaign, with a forcefulness that reflects the seriousness of the situation. In the latest offensive, U.S. forces carried out more than 60 strikes against more than 30 locations in Yemen. This eighth wave, broader and more complete than the previous ones, constitutes a concerted effort to neutralize the Houthi threat. The attacks, backed by Canada, the Netherlands, Bahrain, and Australia, targeted 8 locations identified as strategic points of rebel infrastructure. In a joint statement, the United States and the United Kingdom reported carrying out additional strikes last Monday, marking the 8th round of attacks in just 10 days. The forcefulness of the operation reflects the determination of the international coalition in its effort to dismantle the offensive capabilities of the Houthis, thus preventing future attacks against shipping and ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. In the latest offensive, the United States and the United Kingdom unleashed a strategic military response, dwarfed by the magnitude of the first joint operation on January 11, which focused on more than 30 Houthi targets. Monday's operation targeted a Houthi underground warehouse, as well as facilities linked to the rebel group's air and missile surveillance. The actions deployed by the United States included the use of fighter jets from the aircraft carrier USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a measure highlighted by a U.S. defense official in a statement. Meanwhile, Grant Shapps, UK Secretary of State for Defense, revealed the involvement of 4 British Typhoon fighters in the attacks. These targeted a Houthi underground storage facility, as well as critical missile and air surveillance facilities. International coordination was evident in the joint statement issued by the United States and the United Kingdom, supported by Canada, the Netherlands, Bahrain, and Australia, who actively supported the operation. 8 Houthi targets were reported to have been eliminated in this attack, further cementing the coalition against the threat posed by the rebel group in Yemen. The British Ministry of Defence provided additional details, revealing that 4 RAF Typhoon aircraft carried out bombing raids on 2 military areas near Sana'a Airport. These areas were identified as bases used by the Houthis to launch attacks against ships in the Red Sea. Although there were no immediate reports of casualties, the British Ministry of Defence highlighted the meticulous planning of the attacks to minimize the risk of collateral damage, stressing that the operation was carried out at night with this purpose in mind. This dramatic assault underscores the commitment of the United States and the United Kingdom to eliminating the Houthis' threatening capabilities against merchant and military vessels. This offensive marks the 7th operation carried out by the United States against the Houthis in Yemen, as part of the ambitious Operation Poseidon Archer. President Joe Biden, in a conversation with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, addressed various topics, including security in the Red Sea, evidencing the magnitude and complexity of the challenges facing both countries. In our tireless effort to reduce tensions and restore stability in the Red Sea, we reiterate our warning to Houthi leaders. We will not hesitate to defend lives and ensure the free flow of commerce in one of the world's most critical waterways. We face ongoing threats, and it is imperative to address the situation decisively. The air campaign was unleashed in response to persistent attacks led by the Houthis, who deployed one-way attack drones, anti-ship ballistic missiles, anti-ship cruise missiles, and more. The United States' goal was to disrupt the group's ability to attack international shipping lanes. Washington and its allies have issued repeated warnings about the serious consequences the Houthis will face if they do not cease their hostile actions. Despite the intensive attacks they carried out, the effectiveness of the U.S. response was questioned. In the first days of the campaign, more than 150 precision-guided munitions were launched against Houthi missile and drone targets. However, reports indicate that only 20 to 30% of the Houthis' military capacity was damaged or destroyed. U.S. intelligence officials offer divergent estimates, suggesting this figure could be as high as 40%, although there is uncertainty over the true extent of the Houthis' initial arsenal. Amid this complex situation, uncertainty over the Houthis' initial weaponry highlights the need for a more detailed assessment. Despite intensive efforts, the question remains: how much weaponry did the group really start with? This conundrum adds an additional layer of challenge for analysts, underscoring the complexity of the situation in the Red Sea and the need to address it with wisdom and determination. Amid an atmosphere charged with uncertainty, the United States orchestrated its eighth attack against the Houthis in a dramatic turn of events, unleashed around midnight. This episode left a deep mark on the already turbulent situation in Yemen, generating a commotion that reverberated on the international agenda. Before this new offensive, the Houthis, carefully analyzing the bloody reality created by the previous attacks, maintained a defiant stance. Carrier-based Navy F/A-18 fighters, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and British Typhoon fighters had unleashed their fury on the region, plunging Yemen into even greater chaos. Yahya Sarriya, the Houthi military spokesman, issued remarks that resonated before the latest U.S. attack. He assured that the retaliatory response to the American and British attacks was inevitable and that any new aggression would not go unpunished. The Iran-backed group justified its actions as a protest against Israel's military campaign in Gaza. Anticipation ahead of the American eighth round raised concerns, especially given the provocative statements by the Houthis. His general policy raised the possibility of a forceful response. The first words on the matter came from the Houthis themselves, who claimed to have attacked the Ocean Jazz, a U.S. military cargo ship in the Gulf of Aden, on the same day as the U.S. and British attacks. However, the White House and the Pentagon vehemently denied the occurrence of such an attack, casting a shadow of doubt on the insurgent group's claims. Despite the lack of concrete evidence to support alleged attack attempts by the Houthis, tensions in the region persist like a menacing shadow. This armed group, backed by Iran and in open opposition to Saudi influence in Yemen, continues to carry out attacks against merchant ships in support of Hamas. These actions have had a direct impact on global shipping through the strategic Bab al-Mandeb Strait. The attacks on merchant ships have triggered military responses from the United States and the United Kingdom, who have directed airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. This counterattack has further exacerbated the conflict, raising tensions in an already turbulent region. The scope of this dispute is manifested in the significant alteration of maritime routes. Hundreds of ships choose to avoid the Suez Canal and opt for a journey of around 4,000 miles around Africa. This detour not only increases fuel and operating costs, but also adds more than 10 days to travel time in both directions. The economic and logistical impact of this decision translates into palpable chaos in the Red Sea. The situation on this vital maritime route, one of the most important in the world, continues to deteriorate. The Houthi militias, backed by Iran, persist in their attacks with drones and missiles from positions in Yemen, generating a scene of chaos that affects not only the region, but the stability of global maritime trade. In this context, the urgency of finding diplomatic and strategic solutions becomes even more pressing, with the risk of greater consequences for international security and the economy.